Hey everybody, it's me, Mr. Larson, and I figured I'd start a little series since we're all stuck at home where I do a bit of a read aloud like what I would do in class. And since I don't have a lot of my school books here, I figured I'd do one I've been reading. So it's by a gentleman named Terry Pratchett who passed away a little while ago. It's one of my favorite series now that I've started. It is published by well, a wonderful company that owns this, and I don't expect any money for this. And please, YouTube, don't take this down because I'm not expecting any money for this. But so hopefully we won't get this pulled. But I'm gonna read to you from a book called The Color of Magic, and we'll find out what that means eventually. But let's start. In the beginning, there was a turtle. Somewhere between the thought and reality exists the Discworld, a parallel time and place which might sound and smell much like ours, but which looks completely different, particularly as it's carried through space on the back of a giant turtle. Sex unknown. It plays by some different rules. But then, some things are the same everywhere. The disc's very existence is about to be threatened by a strange new blight. The world's first tourist, upon whose survival rests the peace and prosperity of the land. Unfortunately, the person charged with maintaining that survival in the face of robbers, mercenaries, and, well, death, is a spectacularly inept wizard. Introducing Discworld. The Discworld series is a continuous history of a world, not totally unlike our own, except that it is a flat disc carried on the backs of four elephants astride a giant turtle floating through space. And that it is peopled by, among other things, wizards, dwarves, policemen, thieves, beggars, vampires, and witches. Within the history of the Discworld, there are many individual stories, which can be read in any order, but reading them in a sequence can increase your enjoyment through accumulation of all the fine detail that contributes to the teeming imaginative complexity of this brilliantly conceived world. Prologue. In a distant and second-hand set of dimensions, in an astral plane that was never meant to fly, the curling star mists waver and part. See, great Atuin, the turtle comes, swimming through the interstellar gulf, hydrogen frost on his ponderous limbs, his huge and ancient shell pocked with meteor craters. Through sea-sized eyes that are crusted with rheum and asteroid dust, he stares fixedly at the destination. In a brain bigger than a city, with geological slowness, he thinks only of the weight. Most of the weight is of course accounted for by Brillia, Tubul, the Great Tufan, and Jerakin, the four giant elephants upon whose broad and star-tanned shoulders the disk of the world rests, garlanded by the long waterfall at its circumference, and domed by the baby blue vault of heaven. Astropsychology has been, as yet, unsure as to what they think about. The Great Turtle was a mere hypothesis until the day the small and secretive Kingdom of Cruel, whose rimmost mountains project out over the rimfall, built a gantry and pulley arrangement at the tip of the most precipitous crag and lowered several observers over the edge. In a quartz-windowed brass vessel to peer through the mist veils, The early astrozoologists, hauled back from their dangle by enormous teams of slaves, were able to bring back much information about the shape and nature of Atuin and the elephants, but this did not resolve fundamental questions about the nature and purpose of the universe. For example, what was Atuin's actual sex? This vital question, said the astrozoologists, with mounting authority, would not be answered until a larger and more powerful gantry was constructed for a deep space vessel. In the meantime, they could only speculate about the revealed cosmos. There was, for example, the theory that Atuin had come from nowhere and could continue at a uniform crawl or steady gait into nowhere for all time. This theory was popular among many academics. An alternative, favored by those of religious persuasion, was that Atuin was crawling from the birthplace to the time of mating, as were all the stars in the sky, which were obviously also carried by giant turtles. When they arrived, they would briefly and passionately mate for the first and only time, and from that fiery union new turtles would be born to carry a new pattern of worlds. This was known as the Big Bang hypothesis. Thus it was that a young Cosmo-Chelonian of the Steady Gate faction, testing a new telescope with which he hoped to make measurements of the precise albedo of great Atuin's right eye, was on this eventful evening the first outsider to see the smoke rise hubward from the burning of the oldest city in the world. Later that night, he became so engrossed in his studies he completely forgot about it. Nevertheless, he was the first. There were others.